Hello. So, I was a team leader for the Department for Work and Pensions Universal Credit Claim Review team, outsourced to Teleperformance. And today I'm going to go over some of the more serious security breaches that I've witnessed during my time as team leader and outline exactly how the company reacted to these and how things were done throughout the company. So, as a bit of background, we get given a base computer that lets us go through a VPN to connect to the government networks. This gives us full access to not only the universal credit accounts in terms of the back end and the front end, but also Searchlight, the government feature that allows us to literally look up anyone's records on the entire government system. That will either give you all of the details of every single address someone has ever lived at, any past relationships that they've been involved in, that they've been declared officially, so who previous partners are, whether they care for anybody with any responsibilities, any sort of governmental things that they've been involved with, so past effects with previous benefits, all sorts of council things, lots of details to do with that. Whether they've had any counter-fraud investigations from the CFCD team or frames, and a whole bunch of very specific details, including, like I said, every single address that somebody has ever lived at, and very personal information that we have access to. So we need to, as part of our job, only ever look up people that we have literal cases for that we require for the claim reviews, and to use that just for the purpose of the claim reviews. There's a lot of trust in having access to these systems. So, first major breach that I was given, I had an agent that was transferred to me after having already searched for themselves on Searchlight without being informed that this had happened. And then essentially I was given them to have to investigate and do the hard work of processing out. Now, this, at least the company did the right thing. Obviously this was a serious, significant security breach, and that agent was unfortunately needing to be let go. But they shouldn't have really been transferred to me in the state where they had already performed this, just for me to have to be doing all the dirty work as a brand new team leader, which was most of one of the agents that they were giving me, just to do all of the dirty work that they didn't want to do. Okay, but in terms of the other things, there's far more significant, serious issues that happen. So we have a webcam that we have to have. Obviously, this is my own webcam. I'm just pointing at webcam. And yeah, you need that. And supposedly you need that attached to your computer at all times. During team leader training, we are shown how there's a system that photographs people in the room every 5 minutes, and that there's a review system to see whether there's other people in the room, whether they're not doing their work, things like that. We are assured that this doesn't happen in the UK because it's against the law for surveillance. So that, I believe, is correct, and they are not monitoring through that. However, I was witness to one of the major operations managers stating that as they can't do this, they wanted to implement other systems in place to try and track to determine if people are actually doing their work. One of these would be key logging and tracking mouse movements, and that they wanted to do this without any of the agent's knowledge or permission. So they were, or are, planning on implementing secretive surveillance to track the monitor movement of the mouse and keystrokes in order to determine if agents are utilising them at all times, without, I believe, even informing them. Which again does fall under illegal surveillance that they are literally trying to find a way to implement and get around. That is one thing that I've witnessed. In terms of things, it still goes far worse than that. So, let's go down to a bit more of an agent level and things that I've witnessed repeatedly in terms of things that agents have done very, very wrong. So obviously we are accessing people's records, looking into people's bank accounts and their personal details, and how literally every transaction on their bank account we can see on the screen, including account numbers and very, very personal details. It is a requirement that you have to be in the room alone so that nobody else can access or see this information. So this is a very serious security concern, and there have been instances, not a singular instance, many instances where other people have been heard in the room. So one of the agents that I was given, I was told by a previous team leader that they had witnessed on a monitor call that there was another voice of someone else they were talking to during the interview. This is obviously a very serious security breach concern. I went through the correct processes, and there was also many instances where this agent would not respond to calls through Teams, and they also wouldn't respond to Teams messages, which gave further evidence that they were either away from their desk or engrossed in conversation with someone else and not answering calls when they should be. One of these instances, the agent claimed, "I was on an interview call at the time. I couldn't answer you." Now, we have records of whether they are on calls at the time, and also we can see in their diary whether they booked an interview call. This agent did not have any interviews booked at all, and there was no record of them making a call. We can also see if they were making calls on Teams, and the green icon means that they were not in a call, because it would have been red if they were in a call on Teams. So this was evidence that they had lied in this instance. So when presented with this, they said, "Oh no, I actually meant I was writing interview questions." Which is just, they changed their answer. So I really didn't believe that to be the case, because if they were just writing the interview questions, they would have been at their desk, they could have answered the call, and they could have sent a message to say, "I'm doing this, can you call back later?" They didn't do that, and it was well over half an hour that they hadn't responded, and this was a constant thing that had been going on multiple times. So I said, well, if you were at your desk, why didn't you send me a message? And then they changed the story again to be that they had an emergency family call. So this was an emergency family call that they had supposedly taken and completed at that point. And that was apparently the reason that they were away from the desk at that time. Now, fair enough. If you've got an emergency, you need to take it. I said you need to use the break codes that says you're away from your desk so that we can know that you're away from your desk, and that would be fine. Then we had to go into a team meeting for the entire team to be taught training for an hour. Supposedly this call has been resolved and the agent's back at their desk. And they continue to supposedly be at their desk until 45 minutes into that, where they suddenly have to rush off for a family emergency. And supposedly this is still the same call that was the problematic thing of them not being able to answer in the first place. Now, we're not allowed phones at the desk because that's a security breach of people potentially taking photos of the things. Not allowed any recording devices, cameras, microphones, anything in the working environment, because this again could capture personal details and is a major security issue. And we're also not allowed other people in the room, because again, that's a major security issue. So they were rightly taken to investigation over this, and the fact that they have been witnessed on monitor calls to have someone else in the room with them. Their response during the investigation process was that their sister came into the room and that they gave them a call from their mother and they had an emergency, and that was why. But the fact remains that they were at their desk taking this call during that time process, because they claimed that they were in that in that meeting with the training meeting, and they didn't leave until 45 minutes into that. So apparently they were taking that call that entire time. So they were correct to be taken to investigation over that, and really that was some pretty serious security breaches. However, the operations assistant manager decided, no, we're just going to let them have security breaches and do nothing about it, which is a pretty serious issue. This issue of other people being heard on calls has been witnessed throughout the company in multiple different things. There's at least 3 agents that were under both teams that I've ended up running, witnessed with children noises in the background, and it's against the policy to be sole dependent during working hours, because you can't be looking after your children and working the job, and we need to simulate a working environment. And yet, multiple instances of children being witnessed in the background in not only calls with claimants, but calls with team leaders as well. And the company, again, just ignores the fact that that was against the policy and that they are literally distracted with childcare during working hours, not actually working the job. Okay, but like I say, the major one is the one that was the security issue. We're not allowed mobile phones, cameras, recording devices, anything of the sort other than your issued headsets to work the job in the working environment. But people would be doing this. People would be breaching these. People would have other people in the room. People would have recording devices and phones in the room. Multiple instances of people having phones on their desks and breaching the clean desk policy, so that, there's major security risks. People were witnessed chatting in WhatsApp groups on their phone during working hours, and nothing was done about that because the company doesn't care that people are using their phone and devices during working hours. There are people that have been known to be playing computer games during their working hours, doing other things that they really, really shouldn't be doing during working hours to, not be working. But the company just seems to really be blasé about all of those. Okay, so, that's obviously a serious issue with the security and the trust that the government has given with the access levels of things that you have, but people are still breaching it with recording devices and, capturing these things externally. I've gone in my previous video talking about how there was breaches of the Data Protection Act with people storing literal transactions, names, bank numbers from the bank statement reviews that they're performing and saving those in their email, in the notepads, which is, again, a breach because we have a specific database on the Universal Credit System with a section to put the notes in for this information, where it can follow the correct security procedure, make sure that it is deleted with the right period of time and has the correct scrutiny, and is not an unnecessary duplication. However, trainers are telling people to store a separate second set of these notes in their interview note, not in their interview notepad, in the notepad of their email, which is only accessible by that individual, is a permanently saved note that even if you type one word, it will automatically save into the notes in your email, and then becomes an unnecessary duplication, which is unable to be verified or put through the correct security procedures, and that agent alone is the only person that can ensure that that information is deleted. And again, I have witnessed that agents are not even deleting those, and they are keeping hundreds of these notes with many personal details, including bank numbers, transactions, names, account numbers in full, and very serious, significant security breaches with regards to the data that they are capturing and storing off of the government systems on their own email notepads, rather than the correct Universal Credit notepads. And that is a major security concern that the company not only provides excuses for to protect when agents are doing that, but also tells their trainers to tell the new agents to perform this security breach. And then if you try to do your job as team leader and tell them that this is a security breach, they will say that the trainers have told them to do that and refuse to follow the correct procedures and breach GDPR. So the company is specifically allowing this and training this. And again, when I raised this to my OAM, she said, it's fine as long as they delete it at the end of the day. I have allowed this, which is specific allowance from my manager that they are allowed to breach the GDPR rules and data protection. So that is a significant concern. Now, there's a lot of many different serious things. So, I've got some notes on all of the different things from various agents that I've been given. Obviously, going into any security breaches and different things, there's many things that aren't those very significant ones that I do want to raise up. Okay, so there was an agent that obviously was very rude towards people, including claimants on the calls. He had those 4 calls where he had made claimants suicidal before he was even given to me on my team, and he was very rude towards claimants throughout the process. The company chooses to cover up for these significant issues for the claimant, for the agent, to keep this agent hired, despite the fact that the DWP is expressing significant concern with the way that this agent has treated people and the way that they have reported that they've been made suicidal from the way that the agent speaks to them. And again, this is also during his calls. He was witness to have his child in the background screaming, and the claimant's reaction to asking to, please could you remove the child from the room so that we can talk professionally. His response to this was very inappropriate towards the claimant. Now, the claimant is just asking for some room. A lot of these claimants are in struggling mental states with anxiety and issues where a screaming child might affect them and cause them to have panic attacks or, serious issues, and to request politely that they are able to be spoken to without distracting noise or problems is a thing that the claimant is perfectly entitled to do. The agent never should have had these children in the room screaming during interview calls, and their reaction to the claimant asking them to stop was very rude and aggressive and definitely not appropriate. And yet the company still covers up for this agent and keeps them hired and is really happy with agents that abuse claimants in really awful ways. So I don't know why the company chooses to protect agents that are definitely not good for the public, but that is something that I have witnessed them to be doing. It also goes further with other agents where I've witnessed them responding to claimants that have serious flags that trigger up that an urgent response is needed in inappropriate ways and not addressing the concern. I've witnessed agents that do not respond to these whatsoever, and we need to respond to these within 2 days for the protection of the claimants because these get flagged for serious issues such as mentioning mental health or suicide or anything of that nature. However, the company still wants to protect the agents that ignore these. I've witnessed agents marking no response needed. Multiple instances to claimants requesting help and assistance and to ask if the information they've provided is correct, or various other things such as, can I reschedule this appointment because I cannot make this date because of, whatever things. Some were literally, there was a death in the family and the agent has marked no reply needed and completely ignored the claimant, and then tried, when the end of the deadline to provide the information to be, to say, can I hand this over for suspension? Because they want to suspend the claimants for not providing the information because they've marked no reply needed, to where the claimants have said, my dad has recently died and I cannot deal with this right now, can I have some more time? And they've not responded to them. They've clicked no reply needed. There's been 3 or 4 very, very urgent messages begging from the claimant, and all of them have been marked no reply needed. And yet the agency is still allowed to work for the company, and despite me raising this and refusing to allow it to be handed over, because that would be inappropriate to do so, because the claimant needs to be fully supported and we need to give them that opportunity and that time because they're in a very stressful state right now. However, they run to the OAM and the OAM claims that I'm not following procedure because it should be handed over and the claimant should be suspended, when they are going through circumstances that are very challenging and we should be giving them extra time to deal with those. And we should be responding to the claimants and not marking them as no reply needed and then leaving it until the deadline is due to just hand over to suspend the claimants and remove their benefits. That is not what we should be doing. But the company thinks that following these agents that are doing awful things such as this is the correct process. Now again, there's many, many instances of agents doing things wrong, following procedure incorrectly, ignoring claimants, refusing to give them the opportunity to provide the information correctly or assisting them, and just trying to suspend them and remove their benefits. This is highly inappropriate and incorrect. We should not be doing that. We should be fully supporting them, engaging with the claimants, talking to them if they need assistance, helping them out through the processes, and giving them that full opportunity to provide the information we require, not ignoring them, telling them that, you know, we don't care, and just trying to hand them over when they are going through serious things or they've provided it incorrectly and we're missing some information. These agents are just trying to hand over and suspend as many people as possible and remove their benefits. And I do not think that that is appropriate. Okay, so again, I've gone into the one that searched over Searchlight for themselves. That was a pretty serious issue. There were a lot of agents that were on leave of absence from transfers. So they transferred in from another campaign. They were not happy with the campaign that they were put on, and they thought that the working situation was not correct. The company wanted to change the timeline process from their own procedures from what was 3 months into 4 weeks. So it used to be that they would have 3 months of up to 3 months of leave before we would have to try to remove them from the company. However, the company wanted to shorten this down to 4 weeks without notice, just changing the policy, deleting it all from their actual policies, and really force people out of the company if they needed any time off for anything like mental health concerns or any stress or anything like that. The company just wanted to forcibly get them put through a process and removed as swiftly as possible. And I do not agree with the way that they had implemented that without anyone being involved, any knowledge, and they just wanted to shorten the time frame and literally change the policies without updating anyone that these had even been changed. So the agents were not told that these were changed. They just deleted it from the official guidelines and acted as though it was always the case that these had been in that short of a time period, but they had not. Okay, so I was obviously then switched to the new team, which a lot of them were very insubordinate and rude towards me. Some of them were not really talking to the claimants too well, and there were pretty serious issues with at least one agent that definitely had a great many concerns. I obviously receive a lot of messages whenever someone has had to call the inbound line with regards of complaints from the agents or complaints towards the agents, sorry. And that, on my previous team, I had pretty much eradicated. We were getting no inbound call lines other than the one that shouted at me. And the one that made people suicidal. He was the only one that was getting inbound call complaints. This new team, a lot of them were getting inbound call complaints for not responding to their journal messages. There were at least 3 that were leaving urgent journal messages and not responding to them at all, and leaving them to brought forward date and then handing them over. When they are hitting those triggers to say, you know, it's affecting their mental health, they're suicidal, things of that nature, and the agents were not responding to these claimants and just ignoring them to then hand over and suspend their benefits. And I do not think that that was appropriate for the company to be allowing this action to go. I raised this a number of times to my manager and nothing was being done about it. She ignored all of these issues. These are literally breaches of gross misconduct. I witnessed a great many breaches of gross misconduct under the company policy, and anytime that I raised these to the manager, he would ignore them, and I do not think that that is appropriate. So, you know, there's a disciplinary policy with misconduct and gross misconduct. There were a great many things, not singular instances, that were gross misconducts from these agents, and the management would ignore them and cover up for them and protect them. I do not think that that is appropriate. Things that would not only influence the claimants and cause ill effects upon them, but would cause negative impression upon the Department for Work and Pensions with the way that these agents are treating these claimants and the way that they do not respond to them. They mark no response needed. When they need a response, they do not rebook these appointments. They do not give them the opportunity to provide the bank statements correct, and that they are literally suspending or handing over for suspension claimants that should not be handed over for suspension because we have not supported them to provide the information or given them the opportunity to attend these appointments when they have stated they cannot attend them and they need them rebooks. And then they've just wanted to hand over and suspend as many people as they can. And I do not think that that is appropriate. And again, we continue. So beyond that alone, there is other gross misconduct that they have been doing. So obviously, you know, refusal to follow management requests, where I've given them instructions on how to support the claimants and they ignore those and they do not want to follow those. The management protects them in that aspect. There was more instances of gross misconduct with agents deselecting claims that were actively live and were supposed to be investigated, and they have closed these reviews when they are not supposed to be closed. So this does also potentially allow benefit fraud to occur because the review process needs to be followed. They have been selected to be going through a review process. We cannot just be closing the review process because they want to avoid work. But agents were doing that, and that is gross misconduct as well. While it is rarer that we would experience benefit fraud, I can say that I have witnessed not only fraudulent bank statements, where people have edited the bank statements very specifically and quite poorly. You can very, very easily see the edits, and it's a lot more common than you might think. I wouldn't say it's too common, but frequently you do still see these edited and manipulated bank statements coming through. So it is a significant enough concern, and that is why we do need to perform these checks. There's also instances of people having thousands upon thousands of pounds undeclared, which takes them above the limits that would affect their entitlement to universal credit. And again, you know, we need to check these to make sure that these are correct, so that the correct entitlement is being paid and that people are not being overpaid when they already have above £6,000 in savings. And agents were just closing reviews that shouldn't be closed. They should have gone through the processes and done the correct thing, because we need to check these. There's also instances of people that are doing self-employment without declaring it, other employment without it being declared, and many, many other things that we are doing throughout the processes to ensure that everything is correct and that taxpayers' money is going where it should be going, to the people that need it rather than people that have a lot of money saved or are working, earning significant money that are not declaring it. But many, 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 many more issues beside these, but I think these are probably some of the quite serious ones. Is there anything else that is worth noting that is a major breach? Because again, we've gone into quite a few major breaches here. Apart from the fact that there are many rude and aggressive agents on the new team that I face as well. They've been very, very insolent and rude and abusive from the outgo, and I can't imagine that that is a good thing to have as an agent, because if they're doing that towards me the instant that I came in as their team leader, then I imagine that they're also doing that to claimants, and that we cannot allow. These claimants are in vulnerable positions. We should not be having people that are this abusive, staff hiring them. Again, the number of complaints that I have received in from this specific team on the inbound line is very concerning. Okay, but I think we've blabbed enough with half an hour. But yeah, serious concerns and serious security breaches. People with their mobile phones at their desk, people with recording devices, people that have had other people in the room, people that are having other computers next to them whilst they work at the same time, active and using, whilst also using the working computer. Is definitely serious security breaches that the company knows about and still chooses to do nothing about, because these instances have been raised, but the company chooses to ignore and allow people with very, very, very specific access to government systems that needs to be definitely put under the correct scrutiny and protection. And yet these work-at-home agents are breaching these securities with potential recording devices next to the screen, cameras, mobile phones, and other people in the room. Has been witnessed to be a more frequent thing than you would believe during the working hours that are potentially witnessing these things, as well as them, as I have stated, storing personal details, names, bank numbers, transactions in their email notes off the official government system, which is the Universal Credit Notepad within the claim itself, as an unnecessary duplication saved permanently in a way that cannot be scrutinized and only that agent has access to. That is a very dangerous breach, and these breaches do need to be raised. The company refuses to do anything about them. But yeah, that's what I'm going to call it a day. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye bye. Bye bye.